Hi, my name is Paul Ebbenga, founder of the Blue Earth Project, and you are listening to the Blue Earth Project podcast, where we inspire a higher quality of life by advocating for ecological resilience in southern Minnesota. We promote honest conversations and awareness of local issues through our social platform. We support businesses, individuals, and projects that are making creative efforts to practice consciously. We engage our community, implement our own programs, and conduct independent research in hopes of finding a solution to some of our most paramount problems.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing well, Dave. How are you?
Good. Well, for the people listening in on this episode, my name is Dave Sandersfeld, and I'm excited to be a part of the show and to be producing it. Of course, you are the host, and this is your brainchild. I think the purpose of this episode is going to be to talk about what the Blue Earth Project is, getting people acquainted with it. I think this will be a great outlet to inform people more about what the project is and what you're trying to accomplish. Since the project deals with so many different environmental issues, maybe you can help clear up exactly what it is you're doing here. So tell me, what is the Blue Earth Project?
Yeah, Dave, to keep a long story as short as I possibly can, I'm going to take you back 2 years in history so this all makes a little more sense. I spent the last 3 years living in Denver up until last summer when I moved home to Mankato. And when I was living in Denver, I was developing drone technology for high-altitude cinema application. And when I was doing all the research involved in building this drone, I came across all the other applications for drone technology. And one of those applications was agriculture. And I said, wow, let me look into this and see what the capabilities are. And the more and more I looked, the more and more promising and it was, and the potential it had was inspiring to dive a little deeper. And oddly enough, at that very same time, I came across a Star Tribune article from 2016. And this Star Tribune article was deeming southern Minnesota lakes irreversibly unswimmable. And in quotations, verbatim words from consultants at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, they suggested that we just forget about them. And when I heard that, or when I read that, it hit me pretty deeply, and it inspired me to change my focus from building a high-altitude cinema drone to now building a drone for precision agriculture capable of hyperspectral land surveying as a way to reduce chemical emissions. And once I started building this drone, the next step was really moving home and getting a better understanding of what the actual problem was, and meeting and talking with people at these local agencies who knew specifically what and why was going on. I mean, I had a pretty good idea already at this point, but I wanted to see it firsthand and get an understanding of what actions were already being taken and what actions needed to be taken going forward to help fix it. So I moved home, and my focus at this time was building the drone, as I intended to offer a subsidized service for farmers as a way to increase their yields, save them money on chemicals, but also lessen the amount of chemicals that were running off into our rivers through our sophisticated tiling systems. And this drone that I'm building is very leading edge and complicated. It's all open source. It's not a kit. It's designed specifically to do certain tasks that normal drones can't handle. And in some of the roadblocks I experienced in this drone build, I had time to kind of expand on what it was I was trying to do now that I was home. And I realized there was an opportunity, and that opportunity was filling the void between the rural and urban populations in terms of their understanding of the issues with our water created by excess agriculture. And the other gap is between the agencies, the governments, organizations that do understand these problems. They know who's causing them, and they know how bad it is and what that means for our local ecology, and bridging that gap between them and the general population who's to a degree left in the dark about what exactly it is that's going on and what it's going to take to reverse it. And that's where Blue Earth Project comes in. So essentially I'm branding the Blue Earth region, and if you're speaking greater, southern Minnesota, and smaller, I guess you could say greater Mankato area, branding this region and attempting to unify the effort towards ecological resiliency and to amplify the effort by unifying it is very important, because there's a lot of people out there doing really good work who kind of feel alone. You know, they're doing something great in their spare time. More than likely, they're not getting paid for it, but there's nobody saying, good job, keep going, let's, promote you, let's value you and your ideals, because we understand it's important. There's a lot of talk about economic growth in Mankato, economic sustainability, but nobody's really thinking about how that affects the environment. And it's very easy to look at that as black and white. The more economic growth, the more detrimental effect on the environment, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And that's what innovative solutions like the drone technology are trying to solve, is, an everybody wins kind of situation, as opposed to completely shifting the paradigm and making huge sacrifices and, hurting farmers and businesses isn't necessarily what we're trying to do. We're not trying to destroy, we're trying to build the new. Yeah.
Great. So, I mean, you talk about, this drone technology that you're developing, and that's in the works. So, can you tell me, what are some things that you've accomplished thus far in the community?
Yeah. So expanding on the drone build, so that it now, even though it was the focus before, is now just one example of a program that Blue Earth Project could implement. We've already adopted the Blue Earth River from Rapidan Dam to County Road 90. It's a 9.3 mile stretch, and we adopted that through the Conservation Corps of Minnesota and Iowa. But we'd like to expand on that, because there's 563 river miles in Blue Earth County. We have more river miles of any county in southern Minnesota, and I think we're in the top 10 in the state. And Mankato's geographic anomaly, it's got 7 rivers flowing into it and only 1 flowing out. That's pretty rare. I doubt there's quite possibly anywhere in the United States that has 7 rivers flowing into it and converging and only 1 going out. So willingly or unwillingly, that makes us leaders in terms of our geographic position. So from a standpoint of leadership, geographically, what I'd like to see happen is the expansion of this Adopt a River program, be it through the Conservation Corps or be it through the Blue Earth Project. What we'd like to do is inspire individuals, organization, groups of people, families, people who maybe live on that portion of river to adopt it. And much like the Department of Transportation does with their Adopt a Highway program, turn it into an opportunity for the adoptees to get some value out of it as well, and be appreciated for the work we're doing. And if we could get 500 plus river miles in Blue Earth County adopted, I think that would go a long ways towards opening up channels of communication and doorways of understanding, so that we can all get on the same page as a community and make educated decisions about our future.
Yeah, draw some attention to it. And it's true, you already organized a river cleanup of some sorts, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Great. And I think that was featured on the local news too.
Yeah, KYC and the Free Press covered it, which was huge for us. It was really our first major public exposure outside of social media. So that was nice, that knowing that people who weren't on social media and had an opportunity to hear about us, even though they weren't a part of our immediate network.
Sure. And I understand you also have, something that you're going to be hopefully putting into the river to help sort out garbage, right? Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, correct. So what we'd like to do is somehow filter the water that is coming out of the Blue Earth watershed and watersheds to the west of us in the Minnesota River Basin. The concept that we're focusing on is a Waterwheel concept that was first implemented in 2014 out in Baltimore. It's a floating barge, and it's powered by hydroelectric wheel and solar panels, which drive a belt that pushes garbage, which is funneled to the middle by a sophisticated netting system, up into a container, and then that container can be pulled off of the river and disposed of properly. And the statistics are overwhelming, Dave, from what they're finding in Baltimore. Their situation's a little different. They have a smaller watershed, higher density population, and more of a litter problem than we do, but we can kind of retrofit their design and specifically tailor it to Mankato's needs to solve some of our problems, including floating litter and tangible debris. But really using its main purpose as collecting floating contaminants, visible contaminants, things you can touch and feel. Using that as kind of a segue and an opportunity to also focus on the invisible problem, the phosphates, the nitrates, the fecal matter, and finding sophisticated ways to, kind of tack that on to the current design. For example, trailing aquaponic floating garden behind the device as a way to soak up these excess nutrients in our river. Things like that. Just finding ways to show that Mankato is taking a leadership role. Every time you drive across that bridge and you look down in the river and you see this huge device with, its own personality and solar panels outfitted on it, and you wonder, what is that? And then once you ask yourself that, you go and find out. And then once you know about it, every time you drive over that bridge and you look down, you're reminded of, why it's there, and what's really going on, and what, seeing an example of an innovative way to tackle the issue will hopefully inspire, students of the environment or stewards of the environment to get involved and to say, hey, this is possible, even though the MPCA is telling me it's irreversible, it's unsalvageable, and to forget about it, that we as a community, we as individuals, this is our home, and we don't want to leave it. We don't want to go out without a fighting opportunity,
Yeah, and you mentioned ways to get people involved, and I think that's an important question. There's probably a lot of people that believe in this issue and what you're trying to do. What are some ways that people can get involved and help out, help steer this thing in the right direction?
Yeah, first and foremost is just talking about it. If you hear anybody bringing up issues about water quality or agriculture, to say, hey, heard there's this new organization called Blue Earth Project that's trying to unify the effort towards a solution. Is a big one, directing people to our social media platforms so they can see some of our educational content or the events we host to get involved. Directing your friends, family, anybody that's curious about the situation or concerned about the situation or has already expressed that they want to get involved. Send them our way. We have a ton of work to do. We have 20 to 30, possibly 50 years of work that we're looking at to reverse this problem. So we need all the help we can get. We're also about to go into a recruiting phase, an incorporation phase. Currently, we're a grassroots organization, so we're looking to fill a couple different positions. We need help with marketing, with fundraising. We'd love to have an agronomist, sort of a secondary or primary, I guess you could say, liaison to the rural community is very important. And then also anybody interested in engineering, innovative technology that would love to get involved with the Waterwheel project or the drone project. We could always use help there. And then creating content and just marketing and really getting the word out.
Listening to this podcast, sharing it.
Yeah, listening to this podcast, sharing this.
Yeah.
It's real. It's close to home. It's right here. We're sitting on it. It's lurking in the shadows, and we hope to shine some light on it, not to just incite panic or to make the situation worse. But I think in order for us to really move forward as a community, we need everybody to be on the same page. So the first step is awareness, helping get the message out. And then once we get the message out, we can really start focusing on, what of these huge programs and these visions we have are the most of the highest quality to be implemented. Once we really get the word out, then we can start focusing on the projects and the actual actions that need to be taken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and I know that this project obviously focuses on southern Minnesota, but I think it's something that a lot of people could get behind. People that are just interested in agriculture and making the world a better place in general. So, it's a good thing to be talking about.
I agree. I, on the contrary, also believe that it does need to be kept localized. A lot of these things cross over into the problems that other people are experiencing, but
Mm-hmm.
I think in order to really harness the pride for the 10,000 lakes of Minnesota, it has to be a regionally focused.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get you. I know. Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. This is where the problem is, and we need to draw attention to that for sure. All right. Well, yeah. Is there anything else that you want to add about like what the Blue Earth Project is and what you're trying to do?
It's hard to pin down exactly, why we exist and what we do, because we can talk about the problems we're facing all day, but the solution isn't necessarily clear. It's not going to come from one individual action. This is going to be a series of events, a series of, thoughts in the individual's mind turned into individual actions, turned into, communicable feelings and vibrations, and really extending out from there. Oh God, I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
That's cool. How does the river pollution affect the citizens of Mankato?
I think an easier question to answer than that, Dave, would be how does it not? Because really it affects us in every way you can imagine. Water is the foundation of life itself, and what we have here is a major water problem. And when you consider that the human body is made of 70+% water, essentially we are the Blue Earth River. So when you look at the Blue Earth River and you see it as pretty much the most polluted in the state of Minnesota and the largest contributor to nitrates in the Gulf of Mexico dead zone, that's kind of scary stuff, because it indicates that potentially as humans, as a part of this symbiotic ecology, that it's affecting us in ways that we don't even quite understand or know how to measure. For example, if you're a hunter and you're eating the meat of an animal that drinks water from this river, that's worrisome, because the current suggestion is that you're not supposed to eat more than one fish a week out of the Blue Earth River because of said contaminants. Oh. And to elaborate on these contaminants, the main three we're looking at are nitrates, phosphates, and fecal matter. And these three contaminants are coming primarily from agriculture. So we're in a kind of a sticky situation where we've built our economy around agriculture and kind of have to sustain it to sustain our economy, but all of the solutions we've found so far are hard to implement without causing problems for farmers. So it's not just water that affects human life in Blue Earth County in southern Minnesota. It's the effect of having impure water, impotable water, unswimmable water, water that's so bad we don't even bother filtering it for human consumption, because that would be a huge expense. What Mankato does is drill 700 feet into the Mount Simon Aquifer that stretches all the way to Chicago just to have potable water for Mankato citizens. And they don't know how much water is in this aquifer, so when it runs out, it could be 10 days, could be 10 years, 100 years, who knows? But when it runs out, we're going to be forced to draw from surface water. And when we start drawing from surface water, we're looking at nitrate contaminants 40 times the drinking water standard. So we're looking at, minimal $100 million investment in the city of Mankato just to return our water to drinking water standard. And that's assuming things don't get worse. A current situation, a great case study and close to home. Recently, Des Moines, Iowa, the citizens of Des Moines filed a lawsuit against the government because they don't have an aquifer like we do for their water supply. They have to draw from their ground. And it's very much like here, where the land use is dedicated to excess amounts of agriculture, and they have, similar contamination levels in comparison to the rest of the world. And they had to cart in water, drive in water, ship in water because they couldn't keep their water below the drinking water standard. And this lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they lost. The people lost. So the citizens of Des Moines are sitting down there right now, after 25 plus years of being told that agriculture was their economic savior. And now it's the very same reason why they can't even drink the water they're sitting on.
Wow. So what happens when the aquifer runs out?
When the aquifer runs out, we're going to have to start filtering for nitrates and phosphates. I think phosphates are filtered to a degree, but nitrates are completely unfiltered. So any water that's drawn from the ground doesn't ever end up coming out of your sink. It's used for other purposes, or mixed in with the water coming out of the aquifer, which is pretty pure. So when that aquifer runs out, and trust me, we're not the only ones using it. There's a lot of people tapping into this thing, from here to Chicago. ADM or CHS, one of the largest soybean manufacturers and processors in the world, are in Mankato. And the reason they built that there is because it's right on top of the aquifer and one of the best places to drill in there. So they're using tons of water. But the city of Mankato is actually working with them to try and get them to start using wastewater instead of the aquifer water. But getting back to the main point, when we run out of this water, we're going to have to start filtering. So we're looking at the cost of filtration. And there's various estimates. The lowest one I've seen is $30 million. I've heard numbers, between $100 and $200 million. And when you consider the population of Mankato is only 50,000 people, I wish I could do the math so quickly in my head, but it's, a substantial amount of money from each individual citizen just to get our water back to drinking water levels. And like I said, that's to say if the problem doesn't get worse.
How much time do you think we have until the aquifer runs out?
I think it'd be silly of me to even put a number out there. And at the end of the day, I think the number's arbitrary. Unless we actually knew it, it'd be at 10, 20, 100 years, we still have to solve this problem because it's not just us drinking water around here. It's the aquatic life. It's the wildlife that drinks it too. And in order to have a imbalance ecosystem, we need to have clean surface water, not just clean aquifer water. And not to mention the quality of life for humans in Blue Earth County. We love our lakes, we love our rivers, we want to use them, we want to kayak, we want to paddleboard, we want to canoe. Definitely. But when they're deemed irreversibly unswimmable, what do you do with that situation? A lot of people either don't know or they just ignore it and say, whatever, I'm going to swim in this water. But some people, may not want to swim in that. And I think the state of Minnesota brought in $90 million last year. And don't quote me on this, but $90 million in water recreation revenue last year. You got to figure a lot of that's happening up north, but there's no doubt a large population of people, boating, fishing down here that want to see clean water. So thinking of the economic value and the economic loss of not having, an ecological balance, it's huge. It's huge. We can ignore it for as long as we want, exploit the land and the water for as long as we want, but eventually we're gonna hit a wall. And this isn't just, your typical environmental ideology from somebody who's, young and doesn't understand, this is real, you know. There's a lot of people that are willing to avoid it or just willing to ignore it for whatever reason. It's easy. Okay, I get it. Like, maybe it doesn't affect you so much. Maybe you don't hunt. Maybe you don't fish.
Right.
Maybe you don't drink water that isn't in a bottle and shipped in from who knows where.
Right.
Probably a tap in Flint, Michigan. But
Yeah.
yeah, water's important. But
Yeah.
no doubt about it. So in regards to getting things done or getting, big things done, the end game is always legislation. And there's, city level legislation, there's county level legislation, there's state level, federal level. One big thing that would help our situation here in Mankato is to get a lot of exposure in the Twin Cities where, the state level legislation happens, because the state, the governor, for example, Mark Dayton, he appropriated, say, some $300 million towards watershed reclamation recently. But a lot of that is going to, things around, say, the Twin Cities and maybe being misused a little bit or not being sent to specific areas with specific major problems like we have in Mankato. So the more they know about our situation here, down here in Mankato, the better, because it's only going to drive awareness, funding, and promote action. And if we can get some legislation written that benefits our cause down here, not only in the urban setting, but also in the rural setting, it would go a long way. And that's what in the end is going to make a major effect. You got to look at it two ways. So on one end, you have to have a revolution within the individual's mind. Once they become aware, they get the proper facts, then things start to click and they're like, okay, this is what's going on and this is what I can do as an individual. But you can only do so much as an individual or as an organization within the confines of a system. And when I say system, I mean legislation, like, for example, Farm Bill legislation, which rights and exemptions where farmers can basically do whatever they want with their waste. And in the city, you have a completely different situation where it's super regulated. It's all point source. They have, consultants who go into individual businesses and they say, hey, this is what your waste is. This is what we need you to do with it. And you need to comply by our standards. And the business says, okay. And they do it. And then they monitor that to ensure that they're maintaining compliance. But when it comes to the agricultural situation, absolutely no regulation, because they see regulation as an infringement on the farmer's opportunity to make a living wage. And when land prices were high, when grain prices were high, these farmers had all this disposable income and they're dealing with, a lot of equipment. So people look at farmers and they say, oh, these guys have a ton of money. But it's just simply not true. In southern Minnesota, 50% of farmers didn't even break even last year. 2/3 of arable land in southern Minnesota is going to change hands in the next 20 years because the average age of a farmer is 60 and their kids couldn't give a crap about farm life. They want to go to the city and, party with their friends and have the city experience. So farming, whether we like it or not, is going to experience a paradigm shift. But when you look at it in comparison to the grander paradigm shift that's happening and pairing that with, future Farm Bill legislation or future education legislation, we have to look ahead, because it's not a 1-year issue. It's not a 3-year issue. It's not a 5-year issue. This is a 25 to 50-year issue that essentially is always going to be an issue. So we have to tackle all of these different things and prepare ourselves for the future and set ourselves up for success. And that's what ecological resiliency is. It's fighting through the roadblocks. Yeah, maybe some people saw this coming, but as a community, we could have never envisioned that all of this agriculture in the end would leave us, with scuzz buckets for water. It all happens so fast. And now we're sitting here in the scuzz bucket wondering, oh crap, what are we going to do about this?
Yeah.
And as individuals, most people don't know anything about farming. How do we get involved? How do we solve the problem?
Right.
We're all looking up, to the stars or to the state to come down and do something about it. But until we make them, they're probably not gonna, because all it is tax dollars and revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And to elaborate on what I was saying about farmland changing hands earlier, one thing we might see, because the current argument is that farm revenue stays here. The farmers are coming into town, they're eating at the Old Country Buffet, they're shopping at the River Hills Mall, they're paying their taxes. But in 25 years, when southern Minnesota is owned by 100 different entities and 73 of them are international corporations, is that money going to stay here? Is Mr. Chang from China, who owns 20,000 acres in Blue Earth County, going to go to the Old Country Buffet? Is he going to pay his taxes, or is he going to find some loophole and ship his money back to China? So now we're potentially looking at a situation where we've sacrificed all our land in the name of economic gain, and then essentially get exploited by corporations, some of which are international, to where we completely lose control, and we're kind of scratching our heads. Oh, what did we do here?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're facing.
Absolutely. And the good thing about this podcast is that we'll be able to talk about these issues as much as possible. So this is episode 1, and stay tuned for more in the future.
Water is the foundation of life itself, and what we have here is a major water problem. Let's harness the pride that we have for our 10,000 lakes and reclaim what we are quickly losing. Everyone is downstream from somebody.